Story 1. Am I the a-hole for leaving a fake positive pregnancy test in the bedroom to catch my husband's mom snooping? My mother-in-law moved in with us a month ago. I began to notice my stuff in the bedroom being touched, furniture rearranged, stuff moved, etc. I felt like I was going crazy because my husband is the only one who has access to the bedroom, and he usually doesn't touch nor come near my things. I figured it must be his mom walking in and snooping on my personal things. I told my husband, and he said his mom would never. I had a huge hunch, but couldn't install a cam in the bedroom to catch her in the act. So I got me one of those fake positive pregnancy tests and threw it in the bedroom's trash can. Note, the trash can was placed in the corner near the closet. Literally, the next day, after I got to work, I got tons of calls and texts from my in-laws congratulating me for my pregnancy. My husband came over to my workplace and was all worked up about it, asking since when was I pregnant and why I didn't tell him. I asked how he found out, and he said his mom found the positive test in the trash can in the bedroom. I asked if his answer just confirmed that she's been snooping in the bedroom all along. He had a realization moment, but demanded we stick to the bigger issue. I said there was no bigger issue because the positive test was fake, and this whole thing was done to expose my mother-in-law's snooping. He was not convinced. He had me take an actual test right in front of him, and he was livid, asking how could I lie about such a thing and break his mom's heart since I know very well that she longs for kids. I got a lot of smeg because of this from him. His mom and family now calling me a liar and a manipulator. Am I the a-hole? She's snooping around your stuff. They're liars. The mother-in-law is a liar and a manipulator too. She found in the trash can a pregnancy test. She's looking for that much dirt. How is he? Well, I mean, it's his mom. He's probably blind to that kind of reaction from him. I'd say stick to your guns. And if you were going to do something like this on your own, I would say put it up to the husband and say, look, I'll get a fake pregnancy test. I'll throw it in the trash can. You say nothing to your mom. And if she finds out and spreads the word, it'll confirm. I don't think the husband is sticking to the issue here. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for pulling my daughter from a water park trip because her teacher made her stay with a kid she doesn't like? My daughter, Bryn, female 9, is going on a trip to a nearby water park with her class next week. She loves water and has been talking about it for months, so I was a bit thrown off when she came home crying a few days ago and told me she didn't want to go. I asked her why, and she said she wouldn't tell me because she thought I'd think she's a bad person. When I finally coaxed it out of her, she said her teacher, Ms. N, has forced her to be the buddy of her classmate, Ben, for the entirety of the trip. She was to ride the bus with Ben, to and from the trip, eat lunch with him, and go on all the rides with him instead of spending time with her friends. She then said nobody likes Ben because he whines whenever they have to do work and picks his nose and wipes boogers everywhere. I was horrified, not only because Miss N has made Bryn do such a thing, but also because she has made her believe she was a bad person for not wanting to. Unfortunately, this wasn't my first experience with Ms. N, as she frequently used my soft-spoken, intelligent older daughter as a behavior buffer for the naughty boys until I threatened to report her to the superintendent. It's clear to me that Ms. N is still too comfortable with enforcing archaic gender roles on her kids and forcing girls to do unpaid emotional labor for the sake of the boys. I immediately sent Miss N an email condemning her actions. She sent me back an email with a bunch of hogwash that basically ended with, if Bryn goes on the trip, she has to be Ben's buddy. Fine. I informed her Bryn would not be attending then. I immediately booked VIP tickets the same day her class was going so she could still go to the park and see her friends. What happens next I wasn't expecting. Bryn is quite popular, so I've gotten to know a lot of the moms in her class. When I let them know what Ms. N did, some of them were so horrified that they also pulled their kids out of the trip. In total, 8 kids out of a class of 20 are either not going or going with us. Today, I got an email from Ms. N saying that because almost half the class isn't going, they either have to raise the cost for the other students or not go at all. She practically begged me to let Bryn go and tell all the other parents to let their kids go, promising she wouldn't make Bryn do anything she didn't want to do. I told her she should have thought about that before she tried to make my daughter do her job. My husband said I was being a bit petty and that Ms. N clearly feels bad about what she did, and I should let Bryn go as I've already gotten my way. He asked me if I really wanted to deprive children of what they've been waiting for all year. The thing is, if this wasn't Ms. N's first offense, I probably would have agreed. But she has a pattern of this type of behavior, and hopefully this will put a stop to it. Plus, if she has to explain this to her superiors, I have receipts. Is my husband right, or am I justified? Kind of halfway right. I mean, forcing this girl to be this little creep's friend for the trip is like bad. It's really awful. But you are depriving a whole bunch of other kids a water park trip, and not just Bryn and her friends. It really does kind of make you look like you're above it all, and the kids, and like your daughter and the ones that you're going with, are above this whole trip, and you are kind of ruining it for everyone. You kind of have the a-hole here. There should be some compromise, and I'm really believing you. I do believe that Ms. N is not going to change her behavior after she gets an okay from you to let Bryn go on this trip. It's very hard, the position that you're in. It's not just cut and dried now. I hope you can find a compromise.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 3. You demand we work overtime for free? Enjoy trying to open the store with no employees. I met Grumpy in Narcotics Anonymous. He volunteered there after they helped him and became my sponsor. Seeing that I was trying to get my SMEG together, he offered me my first job out of high school. Grumpy was the manager of a store for a company that sold everything you needed to build a house, from cement and bricks to custom-made cupboards. I started as a loader, filling the trucks that were making deliveries. A little background for the company. It plays an important role for later. When they started back in the early 80s, they sold everything you needed to build a brick-and-mortar home wholesale to professionals. During their first expansion, they got a really good reputation for their prices of power tools, custom-made cupboards, and landscaping, including custom-made garden furniture. These stores were basically big warehouses. In the mid-90s, they opened their doors to the general public, which, accompanied by a rising DIY tendency, skyrocketed their sales. That brought a second, smaller wave of expansion and the opening of the online store. First only with phone orders and then later with a proper site. When I joined, they were doing a third shift on their business plan. They had cut down on things that weren't a big seller, like bricks and concrete, and were focusing more on the big sellers, custom-made furniture, landscaping, tools, and, for some weird reason, plumbing. My first 8 months on the job was a dream. Grumpy was an excellent manager. Having started in the company roughly the same age I was and being promoted through the ranks, had developed a very distinct managerial style. His concept was simple. If my employees are happy, then they work better and provide better service, which leads to better sales. That meant that while Grumpy managed one of the inner city stores, meaning medium to small size compared to the others, we were 4th in revenue nationwide and 1st in customer happiness. And then the reason for his nickname. While everyone called him Grumpy, a nickname he was kind of proud of, he was far from it. The reason was he had a medical condition that affected his nerves and had left him with a permanent frown on his face. He had declined promotion due to that condition, knowing the extra stress would make his condition flare up, meaning he wouldn't be as effective as he would like. His medical condition flared up unexpectedly, and Grumpy had to be hospitalized and be on sick leave for a time. HQ decided not to have one of Grumpy's assistants be an acting manager for the duration, but bring in a regional manager to take over the store for the duration. Let's call him Wilhelm. Wilhelm was the exact opposite of Grumpy. He was younger than Grumpy. He was in his late 20s. Grumpy was in his late 30s. Had a business degree, and he hadn't worked the floor at all. He was hired from the beginning as an office drone and climbed his way to regional manager. The reason he was put in charge of our store had to do with the change of the business plan of the company. You see, the change of focus had created a lot of empty space in the stores. The supermarket chain had approached the company with an offer to rent the empty space, especially for inner-city stores. The company had accepted and placed regional managers in key stores to help with integration. The thing is, the supermarket chain had a reputation of being bad employers. That was reinforced by one of our tellers, who had worked with them for 3 years before quitting to join us. Wilhelm didn't help either. His managerial style was based in only one concept: make more money in any way possible. He started by changing our schedule from monthly to weekly, raising the sales targets to unrealistic heights, and always demanded more. In the first 2 weeks, 6 experienced people had left, 4 quit and 2 fired, and replaced by young, inexperienced people that were easier to manipulate. And then the integration happened. The floor was the first to feel the problem. The supermarket opened its doors and was understaffed. Wilhelm started sending people over to help for 4 to 6 hours, while also demanding to work their regular shifts. If someone declined, he or she was written up. 2 write-ups in 6 months, and you were fired. Then Wilhelm came to lay the law in the loading bay. The loading bay was shared between the 2 stores. Wilhelm declared that we had first helped the 2 guys in the supermarket unload their trucks first because their products were perishable, and then started loading our own trucks. That would throw our delivery schedule to the wind. The loading crew worked 5 in the morning till 1300. We loaded first the trucks that had longer to travel, so they will be ready to leave at 7. At the latest, the company had a next-day delivery policy for a 150-mile radius. What Wilhelm declared meant we couldn't start loading our trucks before 7:30, and they couldn't start their route before 9:30. We said as much, but Wilhelm didn't care. He said we had to do both jobs. When someone inquired about overtime, Wilhelm said no. He said we already made too much money with unsocial hours, 5 to 8, and leaving early, so he wouldn't approve overtime. So, from a nice environment that you wanted to work for, we all started getting miserable. We lost 10 people in the loading crew in a month because of the new rules. The new hires didn't last long. The floor was a mess, and also started turning personnel faster than a $1 spicy paid worker. The floor was a mess also and started turning personnel faster than a $1 paid spicy worker. There, that's the way you should read that sentence. Anyone who is staying is either looking for another job, is afraid of unemployment, or is too young to know better. The sales had a very small decline, but customer happiness is plummeting fast. After almost 6 months, all the old guard that was left was ready to quit. But our savior came back. Almost 6 months from the day he was hospitalized, Grumpy walks in the store to claim his rightful position. He isn't a knight in shining armor riding a pure white horse carrying a legendary sword. He's in a normal attire, slightly limping and holding a cane. We have a welcome back party and have a small glimmer of hope now he's back. We're informed that Grumpy will be on light duty for 2 weeks before he becomes the manager again. Despite Grumpy being back, Wilhelm still remains the regional manager, which means he outranks Grumpy and makes it very clear in private meetings with all of us. If he was caught complaining to Grumpy, we were as good as gone. Still, a few of us are planning to have a meeting with Grumpy after the weeks, letting him get his sea legs back, but another department had other ideas. During his reign of terror, the only department that Wilhelm couldn't control was the workshop. He knew that if he treated them as badly as he did to us, they would quit and the sales would go from a small decline to bottom of the barrel real quick. As I said, custom-made furniture was the #1 seller. So the head carpenter had a meeting with Grumpy on his second day talking about the future of the workshop. In reality, the guy spilled the beans on Wilhelm. With the pretext of catching up with the changes, Grumpy had meetings with everyone, learning what Wilhelm had done and why he had so many new staff. You could feel he was getting angrier with every meeting. He had also had an eye-opening meeting with the manager of the supermarket. Finally, the time had come that he was the manager again. The revenge. On his first day back as a manager, Grumpy notifies everyone of a mandatory meeting after the store is closed. He has a solution. So gather in the store after closing hours, and Grumpy lays out the plan. For the next couple of days, nobody except him is coming to the store. If anyone calls us, we should direct them to him, which we did when we started getting calls about the store being closed. Grumpy's answer to the HQ was simple. The staff was working on a second job during their shifts, which is a breach of contract, so I had to fire them all and find new staff. That caught HQ's attention, because nothing of the sort was reported in the past 6 months. They asked Grumpy for evidence, which he happily provided with our written testimonies, which brought a smegstorm on Wilhelm. You see, Wilhelm had an arrangement with a supermarket manager. He got a kickback from our unpaid labor for the supermarket, and the manager offered the same thing to Grumpy. He also included that Wilhelm regularly declined to sign overtime, which meant that if any one of us went to the labor department, the company would get a really huge fine. The aftermath. Wilhelm quickly got fired. We all received calls to interview with the company for an open position. We all received severance pay for our firing, plus most of the unpaid overtime, about 80% of it. Almost all of us went back to work with a small pay raise based on experience. The company took a long, hard look at the supermarket chain and distanced themselves from them. They stayed until their lease was over, but no shared employees anymore, and a lot of them jumped ship to our side. Next time Grumpy had to take time off, one of his assistants took over. 2 did a stellar job, leading to being promoted to managers in other stores. Grumpy brought back his usual managerial style, leading again to a rise in sales and customer happiness. I left the job 3 years later for a better-paying position, but I still remember Grumpy as one of the best managers I ever had. It's so great to see a manager who not only does well by the employees, which also affects the sales and the customer happiness, but it's also spreading. Apparently, 2 of them did such a stellar job, they went on to be managers in other stores. It's great to see that kind of energy being released and growing into other parts of the business. And I'm glad this business actually is distancing themselves from trying to make a quick buck from this really bad supermarket. I wonder who brought the supermarket to them in the first place. Story 4. My roommate is accusing me of grand larceny. I've been forced out of my home, and my belongings are currently being thrown out of the window and onto the street. New York City. I don't really know what to say. I'm baffled. I've been living with a new roommate for about 3 months. 2 weeks ago, My roommate accused me of stealing $3,700 out of his bedroom and swore up and down that it was me because he has footage. He also filed a restraining order. According to the police report, this theft occurred between the hours of 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. on August 22, 2019. However, during this time, I was about an hour away from home and had receipts to prove it. I went to a 24-hour CVS and a bank that places me somewhere else. Not only that, but I was at the airport at 6 a.m. going on vacation. This was not me. I didn't get word of what was going on until 3 days into my vacation and was told I was wanted for grand larceny and fleeing the country. As soon as I came back to New York on the 28th, I called the detective and set up a meeting. When I did meet with him, I showed him the receipts and provided him with my license plate to prove that I was not in the neighborhood the day of. He very much nonchalantly brushed me off and let me know he'll get around to my case because he has more important cases to take care of. However, this is literally ruining my life. I have not been home since coming back, and I've been staying with a friend. My roommate is literally squatting in the apartment and ransacking my room. I got a call this morning that he broke into my room and is currently throwing all my possessions out of the second-story window. I'm a student, and I can't afford a lawyer right now. I'm about to head to my apartment, and I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to do. Any advice is appreciated. I don't know if it's a scam or if this guy is crazy, but thankfully you have a roof over your head. Again, I can't offer lawyer advice. Hopefully someone can help, and hopefully you can find some sort of resources that would help you out. If you're a student, maybe the school can help you out in some case. You have the proof. I don't know what else the detective needs. He just shrugged. The evidence was right there. It should be a slam dunk for him. Story 5. The time I made my ex mad by making friends with the woman he cheated on me with. In my early 20s, I lived with my ex-boyfriend. I was gullible and believed every word that came out of his mouth. I believed him when he said he worked late hours and came back at 4 a.m. and made up excuses to keep me from meeting his friends and family and let him isolate me and hide me away. Well, one day, his grandmother passed away from natural causes. This is pre-COVID. And he was devastated. So I asked if he wanted company or to be left alone to grieve. He, of course, wanted to go alone, and so I let him. I got a call from someone who knew both me and my ex, informing me that he did, in fact, take his girlfriend to the funeral. But that person was not me. She had been introduced to his family, taken on date after date, and he had played dad to her 1-year-old. My heart sank right to my feet that day, and so did hers when she found out about me. My friend got us in contact, and we talked for hours. We laughed, cried, and in the end decided to dump that man and be friends. He absolutely hated it. We became extremely close after that. I took her to her 21st and drunk, sat by her after she got sick all over me, and we took each other on a date and even to a concert that her family got tickets for. To this day, I have her in my phone as the wife, even though we're both married to wonderful men. Yeah, great that you were able to get a great friendship out of this. And really sucks that it had to be this way. I wonder if this very bad man hadn't done what he did if they would have become friends anyway. Kind of interesting thought experiment. Story 6. Am I the a-hole for pulling my daughter from a water park trip because her teacher made... What? Huh? My daughter Bryn... Same story. Okay, well, I guess that's it for now. Take care of yourself and let me know what you think of these stories in the comments.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.